Hi, my name is Elizabeth Mays, and I'm an Education Program Assistant with the McHenry County Conservation District. I'm at Prairie View Education Center down at our pond to teach you today about our wetlands, why they're so important, and who calls them home. First of all, what is a wetland? A wetland is an ecosystem where there's water at or near the surface of the soil for most of or all of the year. Different sorts of wetland ecosystems include marshes, bogs, swamps, and fens. We have many of these different kinds of wetland ecosystems here in McHenry County. Wetlands are important because they're a natural storage system for our water. As water falls to the land as precipitation, it runs over the land as runoff until it finds a wetland storage area to stay. So these areas are important because they help slow the release of water into our rivers and streams. As they slow the release of the water, they also work to filter the water, to remove any contaminants such as pollution, such as chemicals, and such as soil that we don't want to wash away into our streams. So as you can see, wetlands work as an important filtration system and storage system for our water here in McHenry County. Wetlands are important habitats as they provide home, shelter, food, and water for many different kinds of animals, such as beaver, muskrats, deer, raccoon, all sorts of fish such as bluegill, frogs. We also have what are some of my favorite animals, the macroinvertebrates. So these animals you can't just see by looking out at the ponds like this. In order to find these critters, we're going to have to use some special tools, which I'm going to show you how to use. Now I'm going to demonstrate how we catch the critters that live in the pond that we can't see on the surface. So many of these critters are called benthic macroinvertebrates. What does that mean? Well, benthic means bottom, so many of these critters live in the bottom in the mud. Macro means that they're big enough that you can see them with your eye, that you don't need a microscope to see them. Invertebrate means that they don't have a backbone. So unlike you and I, these critters don't have spines. So they might be something like an insect, or a clam, or a mussel, or another sort of animal that doesn't have a backbone. So the first thing that we're going to do is take our bucket here and fill it up with some nice clear water that's at the top layer. So we want nice clean water so that we can see what we catch. So you can see here, it's nice clean water. Next, I'm going to take what's called my dip net. So with my dip net, I'm going to reach it out into the pond and I'm going to drag it down along the bottom, because like I said, those benthic macroinvertebrates like to live on the bottom. Then I'm going to bring it up and I'm going to set it on the ground and I'm going to look to see if I can see anything moving. Once I find those moving critters in my net, I'm going to take them and put them into the nice clear water very gently, or I could use my net to scoop them out so that I can find the little critters. So the reason I'm not just taking my net and dumping it in is that a lot of times there can be a lot of mud in this net, and that will make my water dirty, which I don't want to do because then I won't be able to see the critters. Of course, when I'm done with the critters in my net, I want to make sure that even if I thought I got all the critters out, that I put all of this stuff back into the pond, because of course there might be some other critters that are in there that I just didn't see. I want to make sure they get back to their home safely. I've been out dip netting for about an hour. Let's take a look and see what kind of critters I found. Wow, look at all these critters I got. Hey, you might be thinking, I see some critters in there that look familiar. Do you see the fish moving around? Well, of course, fish are not invertebrates. They do have a backbone, but they're just one of the other critters that call this pond home. Let me take them out and release them back into the pond so that you can see better all the other critters swimming around in here. Can you see all the other critters in here now? Let's take them out and look a little more closely at them and try to identify what kind of critters they are. Here I have what's called a crawling water beetle. It gets its name because, as you can see, when it moves, it kind of looks like it's crawling through the water. Another distinctive feature of this beetle is that it looks a little bit like a ladybug. As you can see, it has spots on its back and it's slightly reddish colored. Another important thing to notice about this beetle is that it has 6 legs, which means it is an insect. Wow, do you see how little this one is? It's just that little dot, right here. Can you guess what they call this one? It's kind of the same color as my fingernail. Well, that's what it's called. It's called a fingernail clam because it looks the same color and it is about the same shape. So here I have a little critter called a scud. See how this guy moves on his side? That's one of the most important features when identifying him. He also kind of looks like a mini shrimp. This critter is too big to fit in my little clear box. Can you tell what kind of critter this is? Does he kind of look like a lobster? Well, this is a crayfish. Does this little guy look familiar? It's a little crayfish. So we saw a larger crayfish that was too big to fit in this little clear container. This one is much, much smaller. But one day, if he doesn't get eaten by someone else, he might grow to be just as big as that other crayfish. The way they do that is different than you and I grow. We have backbones and spines that have to grow along with us. This critter is an invertebrate, which means it doesn't have a spine. Instead, to protect him, he has an exoskeleton. So as he grows, he has to shed that hard exoskeleton layer so that he can grow larger. And he will grow and shed his exoskeleton, grow and shed his exoskeleton many times over his life. Wow, look at this guy. This is one of my favorite kind of benthic macroinvertebrates to find. Can you tell what it is? Well, it looks very different than it will when it's an adult. This is a dragonfly nymph. Dragonflies can live for almost 7 years in the water, in the mud, before they emerge and metamorph into the dragonflies that we see flying around. So most of their lives, dragonflies actually spend in the water before they just spend one summer flying around as an adult. One of the reasons I love dragonflies is because they eat lots and lots of mosquitoes. Not only as they're buzzing around up in the sky, but also as nymphs in the water, they eat the mosquito larvae. They have a really awesome mouth part that actually kind of reaches out and grabs prey as it swims by. So although this guy might be little, he is a ferocious predator. One of the most important things we can do when out in nature is take care of our fellow critters and plants. So of course, now that we've identified all of the critters that we caught, it's time to release them back into the water and say thank you to them for letting us study them. Thank you, critters, for letting us study you. We're gonna let you back into the pond now. Now that we've released the critters, let's take a hike around the pond to see if we can find signs or evidence that other animals come here to find their needs of life, like shelter, food, and water. Here, as we walk towards the pond, you can see all of these tracks. These are deer tracks. One of the best ways to identify deer tracks is by looking and seeing that they have two parts of their hooves, especially in mud, come further apart. But this is a more classic looking deer print where you can see a point here and it looks almost heart-shaped as you see these two parts of the hoof coming together. There go some birds. They're flying to the shrubs and the grasses that are right next to all this water here. What a great place to call home. Might be hard to see, but there's a little bit of a deer trail here. Let's walk down it and see where it goes. Wow, look at that. It goes just to this nice little inlet. I could just imagine a deer coming here to get some water from this pond. Here we have a hole that someone might have dug. Do you see all these nutshells? Where did they come from? Well, they came from trees. And of course, trees need a lot of water. But because there's this pond here, there's a lot of water for these trees to grow big and strong and produce lots of nuts that animals like squirrels and chipmunks can eat. Here we have some raccoon tracks. I can see some fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4 on that imprint. But if I move forward, I see another one here, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 finger marks and really distinct claw marks. So you can recognize raccoon tracks because they kind of look like human hands. And here, if I go this way, I can see some more. So raccoons will spend time near wetlands because they find a lot of food that they like to eat here. They'll eat a lot of those critters that we caught earlier, like the crayfish. We made it all the way around the pond. Thanks for coming out with me and exploring our wetlands here at McHenry County Conservation District. Thanks again for joining me today to learn about our wetlands, why they're so important, and I hope you learn to love all the different critters that live here in our pond. I hope that someday soon you'll be able to come out and join me.